Here's a graph of the derivative of f. According to the fundamental theorem of calculus, the antiderivative of the derivative, I'll put a t here for a minute, is f of t plus c, as long as the derivative of this is this integrand. And it is because c is any constant, and the derivative of any constant is 0. So the derivative of f of t plus any constant is f prime of t plus 0. When the integral has attachments to it, like let's say a 4 here and an x up here, then what we do is, instead of writing plus c, we make a bracket with the x and the 4 attached, or whatever's over there. And that means the next thing we write is f of t gets replaced with what's up there, and then minus f of t gets replaced with what's down there. And in this problem, it's given, you can't see it here, but it is given that f of 4 is 10. So the integral of f prime of t dt from 4 to x is equal to this. And when we add 10 to both sides, we get the integral of f prime of t dt from 4 to x. Adding 10 equals f of x. So we just added x to both sides. So understanding where this comes from is important. And now we're going to use that to answer the question, which was find the absolute maximum and minimum values of f of x on the interval 0 to 7. Anytime we're asked to find maximum and minimum, we need the derivative of the function that we're trying to maximize. And the derivative of that function is the derivative of this antiderivative is just this, where the t takes a hike and whatever's up there goes in place of t, and the derivative of 10 is 0. So here's the function we're trying to find the max and min of. Here's the derivative of that function, and that equals 0 when x is 1, when x is 4, when x is 6, and when x is 7. What we do is we make a table with the endpoints of the interval that's in the question. It says in interval 0, 7, so we need 0 and 7, but we also need 1, 4, 6, and so we need 7 for 2 reasons. It's a critical value, but it's also the endpoint of the interval. We just calculate f of x for each of these important numbers, critical numbers, using this formula up here, right here. So f of 0 means a 0 goes where the x is up there. It's the integral from 4 to 0 of f prime of t dt plus 10. The integral from 4 to 0 is the wrong direction. We need to start at 0 and go to the bigger number. And when we reverse these, that negates the integral to make these equal. So the integral from 0 to 4, that's starting at 0 and going all the way to 4. The integral is 2 minus 7. I say minus 7 for this part because that region is below the x-axis. The integral from 0 to 4 is 2 minus 7, which is negative 5. This becomes negative, and then a negative 5, and then plus 10. The negative gets brought down, and the integral is a negative number. Negative, negative 5 plus 10. Now we replace x with 1 So a 1 goes there and a 1 goes there. F of 1. This is the wrong order. We need the 1 at the bottom. Because 1 is smaller than 4. And we negate because we switch the order. The integral from 1 to 4, that's starting here and stopping here. That integral is -7. So the negative gets brought down, and then the integral is a -7. -7 plus 10 is 17. Now we replace x with 4. When we put a 4 there and a 4 there, we don't need any of this because the integral from 4 to 4, starting at 4 and ending at 4, that integral is 0, and 0 plus 10 is 10. So f of 4 was given, by the way. That's why we had a 4 down there in the first place. Now we replace x with 6. F of 6 is the integral from 4 to 6. And we don't need to switch these because we're starting at 4 and going to a bigger number. The integral from 4 to 6 is, here's 4 and here's 6. The integral from 4 to 6 is 3. That's 3 plus 10, which is 13. And then we replace x with 7. F of 7, we put a 7 there and a 7 there. The integral starting at 4 and going to 7 is 3 plus 1. These are both positive. They're both above the x-axis. The integral from 4 to 7 is 4. So that's 4 plus 10. Now we just write the answer. In the interval 0 to 7, the absolute minimum is the smallest number in this column. And the absolute maximum in the interval from 0 to 7 is the smallest number. I mean, we already did absolute minimum. Absolute maximum is the largest number in the f of x column. And that's 17. We don't write the x values. It just asks for the minimum and maximum values of f in the interval 0 to 7. The answer is justified by just having this table present with only these numbers, these exact numbers, no more than these and no less than those.